On a quiet morning in the Willow Creek neighborhood, the silence was shattered by a ferocious barking from the end of the alley. It started out as a short bark, but quickly turned into a panicked howl, as if some creature were in a frenzy. When the neighbors rushed outside to see what was happening, they were stunned to see a large German shepherd, its head wedged between the cold bars of an iron gate. The dog thrashed about its body, shaking in fear, its paws clawing at the ground, while drool dripped from its chin. No one knew how it had gotten into such a predicament. Perhaps it had chased a small animal and failed to realize that its head was too big to fit through the bars. Despite dozens of worried eyes watching, no one knew what to do. A sense of helplessness permeated the neighborhood as the dog's howling echoed through the dawning morning. Just as everyone was wondering what to do, the first two neighbors to arrive were Mr. Anderson, an elderly man who lived across the street, and Liam, a nimble teenager of about 16. They rushed to the dog, trying to calm him with soft voices and gloved hands, but the animal was too frightened to recognize their good intentions. The dog struggled more violently, its body shaking in waves, its mouth growling in pain and fear, not out of anger, but out of a desperate survival instinct. Mr. Anderson tried using some cool water to soothe the dog, and Liam brought out a bottle of dish soap, hoping to lubricate the bars so he could turn his head. But every time they touched the dog's neck or tried to adjust its position, it would scream and jerk its head as if it had been electrocuted. The screams caused some onlookers to look away. "He's going to hurt himself," Mr. Anderson muttered, his eyes full of concern. Some in the crowd started calling animal control and trying to contact the dog's owner, but there was no immediate response. Liam crouched down, trying to keep his voice soft. "It's okay, buddy. Don't move. We're here." The situation was getting tense. The dog was panting its tongue, lolling out, its eyes glazed over with exhaustion and panic. The panic seemed to have spread to the crowd. Everyone was tense, talking loudly, but no one could come up with a truly effective solution. And worse, time was running out. If nothing changed, the dog might collapse before their eyes. As all efforts seemed to fail, no one noticed that, from the opposite porch, a tiny figure was quietly crawling out onto the lawn. It was Caleb, a toddler barely 2 years old. Dressed in blue pajamas, his tiny legs still unsteady, he walked with the pure curiosity of a child. His mother had only turned away for a split second to get a bottle of milk, and in that moment, Caleb had slipped through the half-open gate and into the heart of the chaos. No one noticed Caleb until he was almost halfway across the lawn. The crowd suddenly noticed and cried out in unison, "Caleb, stop!" But the boy did not panic. The dog's barking did not seem to frighten Caleb, but rather drew him closer. While the adult stood still, frozen in fear of provoking a violent reaction from the animal, Caleb continued to approach, unhesitating, his wide eyes fixed on the trapped dog. When Caleb was only a few feet away, a few women raised their hands to stop him, but Mr. Anderson raised his hand to stop him, his voice shaking. "Wait, let's see what happens." No one dared to breathe loudly. The air seemed to freeze. Caleb crawled to the gate where the dog was struggling. And then, something miraculous happened. The dog, which had been struggling, suddenly stopped. Its panicked eyes were now fixed on the small child in front of it. No more growling, no more jerking, just an eerie, almost sacred stillness. Caleb gently placed his tiny hand on the bar, reaching out with soft fingers to touch the dog's nose. A soft sigh escaped the animal. Its eyes closed its body, seeming to relax instantly. The child had done nothing but touch, but it was enough to change everything. The sight before them stunned the crowd. The dog, who had been screaming and panicking as if he were about to hurt himself, was now motionless, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. The presence of Caleb, a tiny child whose hands had never known fear, had completely changed the dog's mood. The loud barks of a moment ago had turned into slow breaths, and even a small whimper could be heard, not in pain, but like a silent apology. Caleb said nothing. He just sat there, his hand still resting lightly on the dog's nose, his eyes filled with sympathy. A moment later, the boy chuckled, a strangely clear sound in the tense atmosphere. As if by magic, the dog, once the center of fear, was now a completely different creature. Its ears were gently raised, no longer drooping as they had been in fear. Its tail, once pressed tightly against its body, was now quivering, trembling, as if it wanted to wag. A woman reached out to pull Caleb back, but Mr. Anderson put his hand on her shoulder and whispered, "He's helping him. Don't ruin the moment." Everyone held their breath, no one daring to move forward, afraid that even a loud noise would cause everything to collapse. Caleb then bowed his head, resting his forehead lightly on the iron bar near where the dog was stuck. In a natural gesture like that of two old friends meeting again after a long time, the dog leaned forward and licked Caleb's finger. A gasp rang out from the crowd, a gasp of emotion, of surprise, of admiration. No one could explain why the dog trusted Caleb so much, but they all sensed something profound was happening. There was no longer struggle or doubt in the dog's eyes. Instead, there was peace for the first time since he'd been trapped, his body relaxing. It was not just a moment of redemption, but a testament to an emotion that transcends words, a connection between a child and a creature in pain, yet still yearning to be trusted and loved. The entire neighborhood seemed to hold its breath as Rocky, the once thrashing dog, lay quietly by the gate, eyes half closed and breathing evenly. Taking advantage of that precious moment of calm, Eli, the boy who had been trying all along, leaned closer. He looked at Caleb as if asking permission with his eyes. The boy sat there quietly observing, eyes wide, and his hand still lightly touching Rocky's nose like an invisible bond. Rocky did not react negatively, nor did he show any signs of wariness. He seemed to allow Eli to come closer, as if Caleb had passed that trust on to everyone. Eli knelt down, gently touched the dog's neck, then probed the tight spot where Rocky's head was trapped between the bars. "It's not as tight as it used to be," he said softly, just enough for Mr. Anderson to hear. A neighbor stepped forward to steady the dog's body while Mr. Anderson steadied the gate. They knew they had only one chance, one tries, gentle and precise, or Rocky might panic again. "Okay, Rocky, calm down," Eli whispered, his hand moving slowly, tilting the dog's head up at a slight angle. Caleb suddenly clapped his hands together in an encouraging manner, and even though it was a soft sound, it reassured Rocky. The dog's neck turned slightly, a scraping sound as the fur hit the metal, and then, snap! Rocky's head slid through the gap, narrowly escaping. The crowd erupted in applause, sighs of relief ringing out from all around. Rocky took a few steps back, staggering from exhaustion, but still able to walk to Caleb. Without a bark, he simply bowed his head, pressing his forehead against the little boy's shoulder, as if to say thank you, not with words, but with absolute trust. As Rocky rested his head on Caleb's shoulder, the people around him seemed to be holding back tears. They had witnessed a rescue, but what moved them most was the miraculous bond between a child who could barely speak and a dog who had been so frightened that he could not control himself. One woman wiped away a tear and whispered, "He not only saved the dog, but he saved us from helplessness." The phones were still recording, but now not to share an accident, but to preserve a sacred moment where a child's innocence brought hope and peace. An old man whispered, "None of us could have done it, but he did. Because he was not afraid, he only loved." Rocky was then led home in the gentle arms of his boss, who had just arrived after receiving the call. When he saw Caleb, he leaned down and whispered, "You saved my friend." Caleb responded with an innocent smile, still waving his hand as if to say goodbye. The chaotic morning ended in a poignant silence. Not a silence of anxiety, but a silence of calm after witnessing something surprisingly beautiful, compassion that comes not from age or experience, but from a heart that knows how to love unconditionally. And perhaps from that day on, the entire Willow Creek neighborhood would never look at a child or a dog the same way again. The story of Caleb and Rocky is more than just a heartwarming rescue. It's a testament to the deep human values we sometimes forget in our fast-paced lives. In a moment when adults are caught up in fear, rationality, and helplessness, a toddler offers something unexpected: calm, compassion, and pure connection. Caleb had no plan, no tools, no experience, just a pure heart and sincerity. And that calmed the fear of a creature in pain. For older adults, this story reminds us that sometimes healing and hope come not from advice or solutions, but from gentle presence and genuine love. It also reminds us that no matter how many ups and downs we have experienced in life, we can always learn something from the simplest things: a child's smile, a gentle touch, or a sympathetic silence. In old age, when people often look back on their journey, perhaps the most profound lesson is that love does not need many words and kindness has no age limit. If a child can calm the heart of a panicking animal, then we, no matter what age, can bring peace to others simply by being present and listening.